All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Friday, September 20th, 2024. Our goal here is to review the market generated information in a holistic fashion. We are intimately following the auction's narrative for both ES and NQ. If we have time, we'll theorize and add additional commentary towards the end. We did speculate in the market today. Please see our uploaded recording. It contains my real time analysis. We use these as archives as a tool for our professional development. All right, let's get started. So, start off with our narrative and our summary questions. Where's the market coming from? And what is the objective? What's the narrative? What is price trying to do? So, again, um, FOMC was 2 days ago on Wednesday, and that's already been completed. There's no data or anything for today, though we did have some Fed speakers that came out, but really nothing too much to show there. No information for the earnings, really nothing to report. So we'll just look right at the price section. So looking at the daily candles, we'll start with the S&P 500, who has been the stronger of the two and who recently hit the all-time highs. The goal for the buyers were to, of course, hold the low, which is below the 5700s, around the 93s, and ideally try to get some more excursion to the upside, which is at the 5800. At least try to hit that whole number figure and see where we're at. For the NASDAQ, their goal was just to get over their hump, which is 20K 263. They close right near the 100 mark. So really just needed about 60 points and they couldn't get it. Their goal was to push above that pivot there to run some stops, at least crush above this pivot to run these stops. Since the S&P 500 has already hit their all-time highs, so really not too much of an objective. There was no earnings really, and no real catalyst outside of just some speakers. So really, this was just on price action. So ideally, we would expect an inside bar, just really hold tight and balance for the buyers. For the sellers, just defend all-time highs and defend that pivot point for the NQ. Looking at the actual daily candle, we can see exactly how it went. Again, yesterday, the majority of this action was just all drift, no real structure for the majority of that candle. The RTH barely traded. I wouldn't say barely traded, but the majority of that volume was from the drift up. So as we open within that range near the IB mid for the ES, I'm not too sure about the NQ, but anyways, no real excursion above. We only got this was a compression day basically. We had 220 points of range with sellers and max minimum at the minimum with about 6100 and finished let's call it 5400. So very very strong seller showing from the sellers. One of the highest mins or the lowest mins that we've seen in a while. So just really trying to put some effort, and the volume is fairly decent, giving the last day of the rollover. And of course, you can see all the sellers just stuck there within the middle of that 20K figure. Same situation for the ES, except the sellers had control for a while at negative 13K and maxing out at 10K, finishing around about 5,800. Not the best positioning for the sellers that were here, but nor for the buyers that are sitting here near these 60s that were really trying. Not too much effort in the initial, outside of the overnight and the A bracket. No real attempt to get back above, or stay above rather. Um, the attempts we'll look at for the 3 minute candles, they're kind of impulsive, and we'll glean a little bit from there. But we understand that we essentially just finish with a doji day. If we're looking at the RTH only, which this is not the RTH only, but we essentially just finished sideways. So looking at the sector tracker, you can see we finished about negative 20 basis points with the leader being utilities followed by consumer staples, which is definitely a defensive stance. I mean, everyone else just pretty much just really sideways or just a little negative. Not really too much to show. It was a little weird out the gate. Tesla was weak. You know, Amazon was weak at first, but they ended up getting their shit together. Nvidia ended 1.5% negative, while Broadcom finished +2. You know what I mean? So just a bit of disjointed during this rebalancing and the end of this week, the contract, the options expiration, and so on and so forth. So just a strange day for balancing, just in general. So speaking of balance, we'll look at the market profile and go to the balance machine itself, which is the S&P 500. Again, the majority's volumes really happening at these whole figures at the 50, at the 56, and at the 57. So as we pushed up to this 58, we're having a little bit of trouble, somewhat hitting our head on this wall. Even with the gift that the overnight buyers gave the overnight participants gave the buyers this big gap up, there was no continuation to the upside. We really just had a normal day for that RTH. And then another normal day, but balancing a little lower. So it appears if this is balanced at all-time highs, we may have a situation where we it'd be a little better for us to show this on the daily candle. But the same situation where we had our 2-week balance range here and in here, we broke lower with strong volume with a bit of continuation, with consolidation and then continuation. And then we found our way back into this range and then the same behavior with another impulse. So it's a possibility that this behavior is the same thing that we're seeing here, but we don't know. But as of right now, you will want to assume that this balance near these 56s and these 57s between the 56 and the 57, this is where all that volume is taking place in here, that we're just kind of stuck somewhere in here, can't stay below too long, and we can't stay above for too long. At least that's what I'm assuming. That's kind of what I'm gathering here. But if we continue to balance lower, then the most nearest spot that we'll find is the 5700, this whole number, which is just the VPOC for the composite as a whole. So just thought I'll mention that, but it just appears to be more balancing. Very nice pullback to the former. This actually looks a little better on daily candle again. They pull back to the 33s or so, which is this former resistance zone, all in here, all these here. So they ended up pulling back and testing all of those and reverted back higher. So again, just a little more indication of balance. No singles or anything. So just a normal day. Nothing special. Nothing sexy. Nothing sexy. Actually, before I go to the NQ, just to wrap up this week. Again, this is Friday, so we'll go ahead and clean up these profiles. So we have today, then we have this week, and then we have the month, and then we have all the way back from, I think this is April. I updated it recently. So we're going to go ahead and merge these. Again, you can see this P-shaped profile for the past few days. And we'll go ahead and merge that with the whole week. So for the month, this multi-distributed profile. Tried trading lower, couldn't stay. Pushed up, broke through, pushed up. We're kind of building volume a little higher. So kind of, say what you will for there. But all right, that's our profile for the S&P 500. And then essentially it's the same thing, but just with lowered price, lower price structures. So again, we have our today, we have our weekly, and then we have our monthly, and then the composite that goes back several months. Just a normal day. Filling in these gaps from yesterday. It's absolutely nothing to talk about. We already went through with the S&P 500. So we'll go ahead and merge these as well. Same multi-distributed profile. So I mean, they are trading a bit higher, but they too are near their high volume excuse me, I believe the high volume node is actually the volume point of control, I think, is actually down here, if I'm not mistaken. But basically the high volume node here and high volume node here. So this huge shelf that they're at is potentially acting as resistance, and they're not able to get above it. So until they're able to clear these 20,200s and get into those 300s, I think they're going to have a rough time. Essentially, the NQ needs to break above and then use this as a retest and then build volume a little higher. They can possibly look above, but once they reclaim that, they really want to drive away from here, break through these singles, and then the same situation. But even still, they have to deal with the potential composite high, excuse me, the composite value area high zone. So this is just a high point of this, the quote unquote value, which is real value for sure, as these huge distributions in this middle. So this is just a lot of structure that the NQ has to get through. So just something to be aware of. So we'll go ahead and merge those profiles. We'll leave them as they are. We'll get this bad boy saved. Then we'll look at the intraday. This is not the intraday. This is the intraday here. So the 138 minute. Again, same situations. We're just using candle formats, 2 hours and 18 minutes. Say what you will there. And now for the ES. That bounce off looks a little cleaner when you look at it in this format. And again, we were talking about this in that review that we, excuse me, in our lot speculation video. All right, so looking at the NQ on the 65 minute for the intraday, again, you can see sellers just really swarming. They gave up a little bit, let the buyers kind of step in, and no real continuation, still kind of pushing it, even with the buyers trying with the max of 743, which is the most for the session. They could not, they still had a wick to this candle here, getting stuck back in the middle of this range, which if you notice, which is near where these sellers were yesterday as well. So who's selling, who's buying is the question. Same 65-minute candles, but you can see buyers were trying a little bit more here, just really pushing it, but not able to really push price above. Just a lot of pressure to the downside that they were seeing. You can see the max is 5,500, basically 10K, 5,500, 3K, so on and so forth. And they were even finishing strong with the delta, but just really low range candles, really not too much to speak of. And even when we did break above with our most delta of the day, for the excuse, that's not the most, that was for the NQ. But even with the high delta towards the end, that same wick candle, which ended up closing us below where all these sellers were yesterday as well. So if these sellers are still in here, they have a fairly decent positioning. But overall, just a compression day, really not too much to talk about there. I think my computer may have froze. All right, computer froze a little bit. Okay, there we go. So we'll go ahead and do our 3-minute candles just for some context. I'm going to, 1 second, let me do these SOC drawings. All right, I have those plotted. All right, so we'll start off with the NASDAQ again. So we have our FOMC, which we ended up closing near the IB low. Sort of a weak day, a weak close rather. Massive drift up into the overnight with continuation in RTH, but a high to low day overall. Excuse me, a low to high, which reverted back into for a doji to finish the day. With that context, we drift sideways and open up a little lower. As we're opening up a little lower on the NASDAQ, we coil sideways, impulse lower, we coil sideways, we impulse lower into the FOMC zone. We have our initiation candle that reclaimed this 5S. It's kind of battling with it. Retested this SOSC high, just a little short rather. Reclaimed that 5 smoothing average once more, and then completely engulfed these other candles. And it's similar to what we're seeing here on the daily candle. Just a little bit of an inside bar, and then just more impulse. Testing the IB mid, finding support with the DGPs at first, the IB low, and this VWAP. Couldn't hold it, and then just ended up just really retesting this impulse candle here, where all this kind of started. They couldn't quite make it back to the SOC high, or the initial initiation candle, rather. All that warranted a new leg back to this mid. Ended up breaking through, holding, and then just a tick, maybe a point above the HOD, and then we collapse back under into balance, below the open, below the IB mid, near the VWAPs. Trade of the day, something that we talked about in real time, and we already added to our journal. Initiation candle, we have our pullbacks and then our reclaim. You can definitely break this down on a 1 minute. You can see it here just a little clearer. And again, these are notes from myself. Our 1, 2, 3, hold, impulse, coiling, reclaim, small pullback, entering on one of these. Ended up being like a 15, 20 point stop, easily targeting, back into in these situations here, which is at least like 20 points. I mean, a 2 to 1 or 2 to 1 or so there. With chances to add as we kind of stick below here, but not being able to really hold. Not really being able to hold the trade below the 5 smoothing average, rather. So again, that's just a structured trade that we're working on. Just wanted to take a quick moment. So nice retest on the SOC high, solid hold, and then just a balance closed. Same situation here for the ES. ES was a little bit weaker, not as a drastic overnight run up, but still strong in itself relative to our typical range. We had our low to high into our balance day, coiling sideways, and then same situation here. Just more, it was less of a coil and more of an open auction. Up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Each time the legs being a little wider, making a little more room. So just solid day overall. But just do notice that this is now the second time that we have gotten into this SOC range. This is something that we're going to use from a narrative standpoint. Buyers really want to drive away and stay away from this. It seems to be a bit low committal and lacking confidence if we're continually getting into this range and then slowly grinding our way into this range. Get a little deeper than the last time we were here. Come up, go back into the range, and try to break the overnight high. Still can't. Find our way back into the range. It's not really the best look, I mean, you can look at it from a standpoint that, they are holding above that range, and that is fair indeed. But this is something they really want to move away from. Just saying, as far as the buyers. So, given all the information that we've gleaned, how well of a job did the buyers do? 1 out of 10. We'll probably give them a 7, maybe 7.5. This is still an inside bar. Still an inside bar. This is near all-time highs. We're not giving any ground below us, but there is no upside to the candle at all. These guys couldn't even get above their RTH high. Excuse me. They couldn't have much. They couldn't get over their overnight high, rather, for the S&P 500, which will be their settlement for the prior day. So as of right now, it just seems that the buyers were throwing a bone and they're okay with paying prices down here from these 700s. But again, that's a bit speculative. We'll need more data. We'll see. But as of right now, not the best showing from the buyers for them to really end this week strong. They really wanted to finish not below this halfway midway point of the prior day's range. So again, say what you will about that. For the Nasdaq, really the same situation there. They ended up being, yeah, just really the same situation. They ended up eating up some of their candle. This was their first day, so once they touched it, once they touched their FOMC range at one time, they haven't looked back since. So maybe like a 7.5 for the NQ. Any thoughts headed into next week? Really not too much. I know we do have a fair amount of data that's coming out next week. We're not going to make this a weekly prep video, but Monday we have data, and then definitely some speakers are kind of peppered in, here and there. A little lighter on Tuesday and Wednesday for the data, and picking up again on Thursday and Friday with the PCE, Monday being the PMIs, which is something that we'll definitely take a look at. No real earnings for next week outside of Costco's on the PM session. So again, solid day overall. Just making sure I don't have anything else. Um, yeah, this is just really an inside bar, mainly a compression day. We'll need more information as we head into next week. But as of right now, buyers are leading on all time frames, and the sellers have something to show. Yeah. All right. Have a good weekend. Appreciate you guys for being here. And yeah.